Again, welcome. This is the third in a series of events by the Michigan Tech and on innovators in the industry. And so tonight we have 6 wonderful people here, and they are very excited to share their experiences with you. 4 of them are our alums, and we love to showcase our current students and get to know them and let them be involved. So we've asked 2 of our current College of Business students, Elizabeth Matson and Mitch Floyd. Just a little bit about them. Mitch is a senior majoring in supply chain and operations management. He'll be graduating this spring and will be looking to start his career back towards Wayland, Michigan. Elizabeth is a 3rd-year finance major and a minor in financial technology. And she's going to be pursuing her master's in accounting and getting certificates in forensic accounting and accounting analytics in the fall of 2022, and then looking at doing her CPA exam. And she has an internship this summer doing financial planning. So with that, I'm going to go ahead now and turn it over to our 2 students who will go ahead and moderate the panel for us. And we're looking forward to a great evening. So take it away.
Hello, my name is Mitch Floyd. I am going to introduce Miss Ufkes. Rebecca graduated from Michigan Tech in 1987 with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Upon leaving Tech, she worked at Cayman Aerospace in Broomfield, Connecticut for 2 years. She then took a position with Sikorsky Aircraft and remained with Sikorsky as a consultant while starting Ufkes Engineering after he moved to South Carolina in 1990. In 1994, she earned her MBA at the Citadel, and in 1995 partnered with her husband, also a Michigan Tech grad, to expand Ufkes Engineering into UEC Engineering Electronics, where Rebecca serves as president and Philip is vice president of technology and CTO. Rebecca serves on the board of directors of Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce and is on the advisory board for the Citadel School of Engineering and SunTrust Bank. She is also actively involved in the Charleston Defense Contractors Association and STEM initiatives within the local academic community. She has been recognized for over the years for numerous achievements, including the White House Champion of Change Award for Innovation in Manufacturing in 2012, and the South Carolina Small Business Person of the Year 2010, and the U.S. Small Business Award for Excellence. Rebecca and Philip have 2 children, Nicole and Jacob, and they reside in Sullivan's Island, South Carolina.
Thank you.
So Mitch, are you going to go ahead and ask the first question of Rebecca?
Oh, sorry. Ms. Ufkes, so what are the pros and cons of being a family entrepreneur?
Pros and cons. Well, the pros, I guess my experience is working with my husband for about 20 years. We started in 1995. That time we had a 2-year-old and a new baby, and we this venture. The good part was, something we were doing together. It was, we had the same goals. Obviously, I trusted my partner. If you're in a relationship, a family member, or a spouse, significant other, or even your, parents or whatever, they're people who are on your same team. So them, you supposedly know how they think, and it's fun. It's an adventure. I would say in our case, we had great complementary skill sets. I mean, my husband, we're both engineers, but my husband's very technical. He's a brilliant engineer. He's in the details. He doesn't always do well on the people side. My experience is more on the process side, whether it's the engineering processes or the contracting or bringing all those systems together to make a successful company. I would say that, you know, those shared successes in doing this together was very valuable and rewarding. On the other side of the coin, the cons are things aren't always good. And so when things aren't going well, you know, it takes a lot of toll on your relationship. So you have to have some things in place. So it's a 24/7 deal. You know, you're at home with this person, you're at work. When you're at work, you know, you try not to be married. When you're home, you try not to be at work, and you have to sort of separate that and, you know, have some sort of discipline there. The same goals are always good, but different approaches are always sometimes the case. And you get two type A people, you want to do the same thing, but you want to do it differently. It can cause some problems, egos get in the way, and you really have to compromise. So I would say, in summary, having some ground rules. First of all, you know, your rules of engagement, you know, when you're going to talk about work, when you're not, you know, what your priorities are, and sticking to your priorities in your family and keeping your life in balance, and drawing lines in the sandbox. I mean, we would step all over each other and cause all sort of conflict in the organization at first. And we slowly learned, you know, here's my game was the front of the business and his was the back. So I did all the strategy, all the customers, the employees. And then once it got into the engineering lab or the on the floor, it became his. And we sort of stayed in our own sandbox. And I think that's what makes it work. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Another question would be, what was your process from going from a Michigan Tech student to being an entrepreneur?
Okay, so that was not anything. So that was not anything I planned. I did not plan on being an entrepreneur. I had no, you know, owning my own business. I basically got out of school and, you know, took a job at First Command and then Sikorsky Aircraft. And I worked in advanced composites, and my role was taking my manufacturing engineering experience and developing cost models that would producibility and manufacturability and, you know, provide design guidance. I did that and started my MBA and pretty much was on the corporate track. And then things changed. You know, my husband was an engineer at Hamilton, and the aerospace market was a little volatile at the moment. So he took a job at Cummins in Charleston, South Carolina. Wasn't really sure about that, but, you know, I of course had to, you know, went. So there's my decision point came at that point. So it's kind of as your career evolved, as my career evolved, I had different choices. One of the choices was work at SCRA, the South Carolina Research Authority, which is similar job of modeling, or stay on as a contractor with Sikorsky, which was exciting. I would be doing my cost modeling, but from home. But, you know, let's put this in context. In 30 years ago, God, help me, 20 something years ago, they're working from home. You didn't have internet, you didn't have Zoom, you didn't have anything. You basically did your code and shipped it, you know, and talked on the phone. And, you know, it was a difficult environment working from home, but that led to consulting with the software company that developed our software. And eventually I started a consulting company for cost modeling to all of the major aerospace suppliers. Fast forward, my husband was working for Cummins. They wanted to move him to Indiana, and I was pretty happy in Charleston. So we gave Cummins a proposal that we would take over the lab that they developed to support all the R&D, and we would take it on as under my company, and we would provide these services to Cummins, back to Cummins, and back to Bosch, and sort of industrial type people. They took that proposal, and we started our company, became ISO 91, you know, ISO, you know, certified. We worked through all of that, and then we came to the problem, you know, the situation where the trucking industry was declining. So now what do we do? So we made three major decisions. We expanded our capabilities and grew our capabilities in engineering, prototyping, test equipment, and we developed the ability to be vertically integrated with CCAs, wire harnesses, integrated box assemblies, up through complex test equipment. We brought everything up to a, you know, best state-of-the-art automated industry. We then expanded the markets from industrial to in defense. We took our automobile trucking industry to the Marine Corps and the Navy, and did the AAV amphibious assault vehicle, the MRAP going on in Iraq, all the power distribution. We worked on that for several years, and then we decided to take another step, and we got into aerospace through Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed, doing integrated systems and advanced test systems, and became a 5-star supplier to those companies. The last thing we did is decided, being an independent or a contractor, a supplier, we wanted our own IP, we wanted our own products. And we did that through working with entrepreneurs and developing medical systems with sterilization systems, a TruD, and then also through big contracts with the Marine Corps for distributed power systems. And our big product was Greens, which was the ground renewable expeditionary energy system, network system for the Marine Corps. And at that point, we wanted to take the company to a next level, and we brought in different owners, and we sold the company in 2000. The end.
Maybe one more time for one more question. What were the differences between being an entrepreneur and a manager?
Well, those, I would say those, that would be, let me see. I think the biggest thing is that when, when you're a manager, I would always go to my boss, okay, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? There was always someone. And when I would own the company, I found out that my office or my husband's office, we were at the end of the hall. It was our problem. It was something we had to fix. So there was, just a huge responsibility and a level of ownership, excitement, and also stress. The next thing would be is you don't quit. You're a manager, you're working, and you're upset, or you don't like your job, you can quit. When you own a company or you're an entrepreneur, you're on the hamster wheel. You basically are on that wheel, and you can't just leave. You might have your personal assets as part of your collateral. I mean, you don't just walk away, you have to finish the game. And I think another challenge is, you set the culture. You are the company, you're the culture, and not everybody may be as passionate about what you're doing. So being a good leader to make everybody understand and be engaged and sharing the successes in the company and be part of a team and set that culture, I think was more dominant as an owner versus a manager. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Rebecca. We'll go ahead now and turn it over to Elizabeth.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to speaking with Chang Park for a bit. So Chang Park graduated from Michigan Tech with a bachelor's in electrical engineering and then received his master's in business administration from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Park has had experience in engineering consulting, designing and reviewing mass transit systems, and in international finance, working with JP Morgan in New York. Guided by his entrepreneurial spirit, Chang started a business in his sister's garage that provided jobs for youth in an impoverished area in Korea. His business steadily expanded, and he has been developing and marketing remote controls and home automation products for more than 20 years. Currently, Chang chairs the Chang K. Park Foundation, an organization that supports human rights, the elimination of poverty and hunger, and the implementation of political reform and economic justice. He's also the member of the National Governing Board of Common Cause, a public interest organization in Washington, D.C., the board at the Union Theological Seminary in New York, and Bread for the World. So Chang, what was your process of going from a Michigan Tech student to being an entrepreneur?
Well, I guess I have to unmute myself first. And hearing from you, I'm not sure if you're talking about me, but I guess I'm the only person. Maybe I'll just describe how I began. Maybe that will give you some idea about what it means to be an entrepreneur. When I went to college, Michigan Tech, in 1970s, I'm not sure if there's a terminology called entrepreneur. I never heard it, if there was. So it is something sort of evolved. And if I may describe how I began after I finished my school at the Michigan Tech. I was born and raised in Korea, but I came here as a teenager. And I went to Michigan Tech, and I was supposed to graduate in 1972, but because I flunked my chemistry in the first semester at Michigan Tech, and a few other setback at the early stage of college, I could not graduate. in 4 years, and I have to come up with some sort of excuse as why I have to stay in Michigan Tech 1 more year. So at that time, they have a program called Engineering Administration. It's a 1-year program designed for the engineers to learn about the business side. So I took that engineering administration for 1 year, and I was quite fortunate because I learned quite a bit. I never knew about the finance or the marketing or management, anything like that as I was studying engineering. So I learned quite a bit. I really liked the finance side. But then when I graduated, I had to get a job. And since I invested 4 years in engineering, I decided to go to electrical engineering side. And that's how I get a job in Philadelphia. At that time in 1970s, there was a great oil shock, and everyone's talking about the mass transit is the way to go to save energy. This is still true, but we don't pay too much attention nowadays. So I went into mass transit side, designing Washington Metro and San Francisco bus system, Northeast electrification and all those kinds of stuff for 4 years. And then I couldn't shake off my liking of finance when I was at the Michigan Tech. So I decided to go to business school, and I went to Wharton, as you mentioned. And then after I graduated, I decided to go to banking to learn about business, because as a banker, you got exposed to the various type of business. So I signed up with the JP Morgan in New York. At that time, we called it Morgan Guarantee. So I spent 4 years, and some of those 4 years, I spent the time in Korea. And when I was in Korea, because of my personal interest, I worked with the people in the slum area and saw a lot of young people without job and not doing much. So I thought that it would be good to set up the factory to employ them. So that's something you shouldn't do. You should know what you're doing. But at that time, it was a passion that sort of, I decided with my heart rather than with my head. So I decided to set up the factory assembling cable in Korea and supplying to market here in US. But it was quite a struggle because I did not know what I was doing. And also I never had the experience in marketing. You know, I always thought that as an engineer, if the product is good, it should be able to sell by itself. But that was not the case. I regret. If you are studying marketing, be sure you learn what you are learning, because it's so important. So I struggled for 5 or 6 years trying to set up the business. And, you know, when I go to various factories here in US and try to sell the cable, assembled cable, they say, well, we don't need assembled cable, but since you're from Korea, can you supply some of the parts that have been made in Korea? So I supply quite a bit of parts that goes in the TV or various monitors and all those. And one of the products they asked me to supply was a remote control. This was 1980s, and remote control was still at quite a primitive stage. So I thought that by looking at it, if I put in my engineering and time and effort, there could be a good market for the good quality advanced type of remote control. So that's when I started to focus on remote control in late 1980s. And early 1990, I started to supply remote control to cable operator. As you know, like a Time Warner, Charter, they sort of install, when they install the system, they bundle up remote control with a set-top box. So I've been supplying that since 1991, and it is still part of my business. I think in the last 10 years, we supplied almost 100 million remote controls to the cable operator. So it's still part of our business. And in 1994, I decided to develop a remote control, much more advanced remote control with a various feature with an LCD screen, which is quite sort of new at the time. And for the home theater market, and it worked out very well. And advanced remote control, by pressing one button, you can turn on TV, VCR, all this kind of thing. So that's what I've been doing since 1994, and then supplying remote control to the TV manufacturer or set-top box manufacturer. So that's how it is. And 1980s, I think we account for about 80%, about 60% of market share for the home theater remote control here in US. And then because we have become very complacent with our success, so we are sort of late in entering the home automation market. But so, you know, as home automation market grows, home theater is just a single room. Home automation is whole house control. So we are sort of late in entering the home automation market because of our success. So you shouldn't be too complacent with your success. So in 2010, we entered the home automation market with our product. And initially we have some setback because we underestimate the complexity of home automation. So we struggled with our new product for the first 2 years. And then we address them all. And then, so that's what we are doing now. We are doing cable side remote control, home theater remote control, and home automation remote control. So those are the 3 areas my company is involved in. So as I described, there's a lot of setback and mistake and learn from that. So I hope I can share some of those with you so that you can learn what you should do and what you should not do, especially based on what I experienced.
Yeah, so what are the requirements and skill sets that you've learned that you need to have to be a successful entrepreneur?
I think you have to think outside of your box, you know. I think that's very crucial. And in that sense, you have to be very creative. This is not something you learn after you finish the school. You can start it right away when you're in school. And try to think outside of your box. And also prioritize, you know, when you start your business, your time and capital are the 2 precious resources you have. How you allocate this resource will decide whether you succeed or not. So think about prioritizing whatever you do when you're in college. What is important, what is less important. So for example, when I was in business school, it's a very crude description, but my macroeconomic professor, he's a Keynesian economic professor, he told us that when someone has a toothache and heart attack at the same time, you go to a cardiologist first, not a dentist. If you go to dentist, you are dead. So that's a sort of crude way of describing how you should prioritize what you do. So that's something you can still start to practice. And third one I like to mention is you have to learn to reflect what you did and then learn from your experience. It may be good or bad and what you may want to do differently going forward. Because you may have heard a terminologist saying that someone who has a 10 years experience, repeating 1 year experience 10 times, certainly we don't want to be that. So you have to be able to reflect what you did and then sort of learn from that experience and then go forward. So those are 3 things I may want to mention.
Awesome, those are great. What advantages did you find in being a Michigan Tech engineer in terms of becoming an entrepreneur?
I guess how to survive in that environment. Yeah, I think that's something. Well, you know, I had a lot of setback when I was in Michigan Tech, partially because I couldn't speak English well enough. So you had a lot of setback, and it sort of steals you. I mean, put a steel in your bone, and then you can experience setback in life. I mean, the life is full of up and down. So you don't get too discouraged when you're down. So I think that's the kind of things I learned when I was in Michigan Tech. And of course, you know, what I learned at the school is very important, but the personal trait is that as well. And also when I was in business school, one thing I value still is that the diversity. As an engineer, you know, business school, they do a lot of case study. And then I prepare the case, how we read about the problems that the company encountered, and then we come up with various solutions of our own. And I look at it, and then I sort of make a presentation based on my view as to what they should do as an engineering with an engineering background. And then someone from completely different background, music or history, they come up and then they make a presentation of their own based on their experience and view. And then I ask myself, why didn't I look at it from that angle? And I learned from that. So that's another trait I learned, and then still practice, trying to look at it from different angle, different point of view, so that it's not just my view, but how would other people look at it, and then try to attack that issue from that various angle.
Thanks. I think we should move it along. I'm going to pass it back to Mitch right now. So take it away.
Okay, the next participant should be Kanwal Rekhi. Kanwal graduated from Michigan Tech in 1969 with a degree in electrical engineering. Since then, he has served in many roles in Silicon Valley and other areas, and became the first Indian American founder and CEO to launch a venture-backed company on the NASDAQ, which is very impressive. And since then, he has invested in multiple other startups and other enterprises. The first common question for you, Rekhi, is what was your process from going from a Michigan Tech student to being an entrepreneur?
So I was a hardcore engineer. After I left Michigan Tech, I worked as a design engineer for almost 13 years. Where logic designer, system designer, computers, mostly computers, CPU designer. And by late 70s, I had become, really, really good. I was at the top of my game, and Indians were not seen as a managerial material. In America at the time, there was no history of Indians becoming managers. They were seen techies. And then I saw people who worked for me that promoted over me. And eventually one day I said, why do I have to work for somebody? Why don't I, don't try my own hand? Silicon Valley is a hotbed of entrepreneurship. I knew a lot of people, mostly, my American colleagues, who had become entrepreneurs, and I knew I was sharper than them, and in almost every respect. And so why don't I try my own hand? And so back in 81, I made a decision to leave my job and do it. And it was a tough decision because I was making really, really top money. Back in 1981, I was making $75,000 a year. That's like making $400,000 a year now. That was at the top of the, you could buy a house and a couple of cars, and we were living the American dream. And my wife thought I was crazy to give up a job like that because I want to be an entrepreneur. But 1981 was the year the world was changing very rapidly. That was the year IBM PC was introduced. And also that was the year internet, a networking specification called Ethernet was published by Digital, Intel, and Xerox. And it was sort of in the air that the world of mainframe computers, mini computers, is about to get to the world of distributed computing, and there will have to be a network in the back. And I said, maybe I should go and do that networking. So it was something, I wanted to be out of my job, be my own boss, get some promotions beyond being an engineer. I was only 35 and I had hit the top of the ladder for the technical ranks, and there was no way for me to move into management ranks. And so I went and tried my hand. So,
Okay.
by 82, mid 82, we had our company functioning.
Okay, thank you. Another question would be, under what circumstances do entrepreneurs thrive?
The entrepreneurs thrive during the time of rapid change. During the rapid change, the big companies which have inertia, which have mass, they cannot move fast enough to change, adapt to the change. And entrepreneurs who don't have any inertia at all, they can, turn on a dime. The big guy owns the Apple cart. Entrepreneurs can upset his Apple cart without losing anything on his own side. So the entrepreneurs, do very, very well, during the change, rapid change times, and especially if there's a change in the technology. They don't have investment in the current order, so they're able to move and do new stuff without obsoleting their own current stuff.
One more question for you, and that is, how do you transition from being an entrepreneur to a serial entrepreneur?
Well, I want to answer the question that Elizabeth asked, about what's the difference between an entrepreneur and manager from Rebecca. And I'll give you the answer to what you asked me after that. Manager by definition is a manager of assets, be it, people asset, human resource assets, customer assets, inventory assets, factory assets. Your job is to manage and streamline the whole thing and manage it well and more efficiently. If you can improve your efficiency by 5%, you can double, maybe increase your profit by 50% to 100%. Because a marginal improvement in efficiency reduces trust and retains the value, right? So managers are by and large streamliners. They like the predictable environment, so they can plan and they don't like the surprises. They don't like the changes because they have this nice streamlined process. Entrepreneurs, on the other hand, are very much are disruptors, innovators. They have nothing to manage. There are no assets to manage yet. When you become an entrepreneur. So it's not as if they could improve their efficiency by 5%. And by the way, 5 to 10% efficiency improvements don't mean much. They want 10x improvements. They want improvements, which fundamentally change the economics. So there is this streamliner versus innovator disruptor, and so speed becomes of the essence for entrepreneurs. So I look at the entrepreneurs as chaotic people who are moving and doing this things by the seat of their pants in the beginning before they get the handle on the market, like Chang mentioned. And managers, their job is to make sure trains run on time and all that. So there's a fundamental difference. There's a fundamental difference in the way they think, they approach. Entrepreneurs are very restless. Managers are very disciplined and stable. And so you have this issue, and the problem is always entrepreneurs, when they start to succeed, they start to build assets. They start to have inventory. They start to have customers. They start to have now you cannot be disruptor anymore, because if you disrupt, you don't disrupt the value you already have created. So there is this a problem. Every entrepreneur either has to learn to become a manager or hand somebody up a managerial fellow and don't do the next entrepreneurial gig. Because it's very, very hard for an entrepreneur to become stable, disciplined, streamliners, because that's not what they did. That's not how they succeeded. So that's the issue. So either you become, once an entrepreneur is always an entrepreneur. It's, you can't change your biology. You cannot change the way you think. But Chang has been able to become a manager. So I don't want to say it's impossible, but by and large, entrepreneurs have to do the next bit.
Well, Ron, I have to say that I have to tie up myself on a chair when I make that transition. But not everybody is able to make that transition. And I have seen in this valley, at some size, when you have enough assets, you need to make sure your shipments are happening, your manufacturing is happening, your customers have been billed, money is being collected. You need to bring a manager in to help you. Bill Gates brought Mike Maples. You don't on the list. At Google they had Eric Schmidt doing it. At Facebook, what's her name? She came in to help. So there is a person whose job is to make sure the trains are running on time, and the entrepreneur is disruptively innovating on the edges, right? Or he leaves and does the next job. Mitch,
Did I answer your question, Mitch?
Oh, yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you. I will pass it back to my colleague for the final panelist today, Mr. Rockwell.
Yeah, so a little bit about John Rockwell. He earned his bachelor's in business administration at Michigan Tech and then his MBA from the University of Minnesota. After earning his bachelor's, he was able to indulge his love of hockey as a member of the U.S. junior national team and the U.S. select team. After discovering his passion for building companies and commercializing technology while working in 3M's business development wing, John spent over 25 years funding, developing, and managing over 22 companies across clean tech sectors. Currently, John leads Accelergy, which processes low carbon synthetic distillates. And then prior to this, John was the founder and managing director of Element Partners, an $800 million venture capital and private equity firm focused on clean tech investments. John also spent time at a variety of other companies, including those in private equity, investing in management of early stage companies and manufacturers. So John, what was your process of going from a Michigan Tech student to being an entrepreneur?
Sure. Well, I went to Michigan Tech for two things. I wanted to get a chemical engineering degree, which was my top priority. And I was on a hockey scholarship, so I wanted to play hockey. Ended up that I couldn't get into Doc Barry's class. It was right during hockey. For the panelists to get a kick, because Doc Barry came in and he was the guy that said, good afternoon, welcome to Chemistry 201. My name's Doc Barry. Please take a look to your left and a look to your right. One of you won't be here at the end. And unfortunately for me, or fortunately, I guess his class was right in the middle of hockey, and we had done very well a year before. And so I decided that I would wait a year and take it the next year. The next year, it was still in the middle of hockey. So I never became an engineer. I got my business degree, and what I've done is just pursue my passions. That's what I like to do. And I was passionate about hockey, so I went and played professional hockey for a few years. Then I went and Mr. Chang, I loved finance. So I also liked learning about business. So I said, I'm going to get a position in acquisitions at a diversified company. And I was fortunate enough to get hired by 3M. And that's where I first figured out you could be an entrepreneur, because someone mentioned earlier, I had no idea you could be an entrepreneur. And Kanwal and I have spent the last dozen years going up the tech because we want to expose you guys to that. So you at least know what it is. And Kanwal's got a lot of talent, but if I can do it, you guys can do it. So anyway, when I got exposed to venture capital, so I left 3M and went into a very small venture capital firm, which we weren't successful in raising our next fund. But my partner was a multi-time CEO. He asked me if I wanted to go in and do interim management, where the deal would be he would get us the business, and he would know what to do, and then I would do everything. And I thought that was great to learn that. I was fortunate in my first company, it turned out very well. So I got asked to run another company, and that turned out very well. And the first company, the main investor was Advent International, and they were having some trouble with their Silicon Valley office. So that's how I got into a major venture capital firm. They asked me to go down there and turn that around, which I did. And then when we raised $10 billion in one of our funds and turned from 10 billion under management to 20 billion, it was too much money for us to do venture capital investments. So that's what I'd love to do. So we spun out our venture capital funds and formed a company called Element Partners. And then when Element Partners, we raised $800 million, and then we went to structured finance, which is not a bad place to make a living, but I don't like to do it. So I left with the early stage portfolio and was managing that. And then some of my friends asked me to go into Accelergy when they had spun off a company and lost their whole commercial management team and figure out what to do. And I went in there and saw something that I thought was a good plan for them. And the board said, great, we need someone to run it. Will you be interim CEO? And I said, no, I won't. I don't want to do that at this point in my life. And 6 months later, I was interim CEO, and now I'm CEO. So that's how I got to where I am today.
So building off a little bit, you mentioned that you've just like pursued your passions. Can you expand on the importance of this in being a successful entrepreneur, and if there are any other skill sets that you think are important?
Yeah, I think it's critical that you're passionate about what you're doing. It is so hard to succeed. I'll give you an example. I was in a medical laser company where I was CEO, and it was basically bankrupt when I came in. We had lost $400,000 a month before and had $110,000 in cash. And we ended up selling it 3.5 years later for $135 million, which people would say is a success. And when I was in the Advent Investment Committee, I think I voted no on 25 laser deals, because when I look back on it, I couldn't believe that we actually succeeded. So you've got to be passionate to overcome all that. So the second thing is you've got to be very hardworking. There's never enough hours in the day to do the critical things, much less the other things. They have to be very hardworking and persistent. And you can't be deterred by failure, because you're going to fail on a lot of stuff, or rejection, because you're disrupting things and doing things that people haven't done before. Most people are going to think you're not going to succeed. And so the final thing I get on that is, if you've got all those challenges, you've got to be pretty focused on what you're doing with your time. You got to be spending all your time on getting your product developed and solving a critical customer need.
Yeah. Elizabeth, can I add one thing about passion?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a very tough life being an entrepreneur in the beginning. Yeah, nothing works. You have nothing to show for what you did today. So to sustain yourself, there has to be some inner fire, inner passion, and you have to justify why you are doing it. You have to justify to your spouse, why are you working for substandard salary 12 hours a day, right? And this should last years. This should last 2, 3, 4 years before you start to see, brighter side. So, and nobody has asked you to become an entrepreneur, not your spouse for sure, not your parents for sure. So somebody has to drive to become entrepreneur, and that has to be from inside yourself. And you have to tell yourself, why are you doing it? Because I want to show them I can do it. In my case, I have to show them the Indians are as good as anybody out there. Just to prove that we are we are as good as anybody out there. And I just had to do it. And so the passion is what it takes to go through this tough, lonely journey. And Chang talked about that earlier too, right?
Yeah, I must say, I totally agree with Kanwal and John. You have to be passionate about what you are pursuing, and you have to believe in the value of what you are pursuing as well. People tend to think of entrepreneur related to money. Of course, in our capitalistic society, money is important, but the accumulation of wealth cannot be a goal by itself. It is what you do after you accumulate wealth. That is far more important. So once again, accumulation of wealth is not cannot be a goal by itself. And I appreciate John and Kanwal what you do, because you are funding all those people who are starting up business and they need capital, and you are helping them to also grow. So that's quite admirable as well. And regard to hard work, of course, there's a lot of hard work up and down. And especially when I was starting my business and struggling, I tell myself, sometimes you stay in your office well beyond midnight. And I tell myself, everyone can sprint or run 10 miles, but extra 1 mile is the hardest part. And here I am in the office at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and this is an extra mile I'm running, because business world is a competition. You have to be ahead of other people. You have to prevail. So in order to prevail, you have to ready to run extra miles. So hard work is very important as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I want to add one more thing about money. I left a job which was paying $75,000, which was really top of the line salary. I did not reach $75,000 for 4 years after I left that job. So if you're working for money, you're much better off working for Google or Facebook or somebody, and move up the ladder. So it has to be something more than that. And also, the entrepreneurs have to outlast others. The point Chang just made, you just have to outlast the others. The one who's still standing at the end of 3-4 years of all that is the winner. The others go back and get the jobs.
I think
this all has to be driven from inside.
Yeah, one other thing to add on this is that it may take you a long time to figure out what you're really passionate about. And I find this in the companies I've gone in or started. And even when I'm in venture capital looking at investments, I may go a couple years without finding something that I'm super passionate about. And then there'll be 2 or 3 things will come up in a couple months. So, but one of the things that I think you need to do early in your career is acquire skills. So, if sales skills are fantastic, if you got the chance to do management, engineering, but like Kanwal, I have never taken a job for money in my life. In fact, most of the good jobs I've had to take a big cut in pay. If my first job was when I left 3M to go to the venture capital fund, was not quite a 50% cut in pay. And my next one, my first CEO job, to Kanwal's point, I made nothing for 18 months. And my wife was not very happy.
So let me add you one more thing, right? The number one skill you need as an entrepreneur is not the technical skills. The number one skill is being able to sell.
Yes.
You have to sell yourself to leave your good paying job for higher reason. You have to sell your spouse to suffer with you, through this process. You have to sell to the investors to give you money for half-baked ideas that you may have. You have to sell the guys to leave their jobs to come and work for you for half the salary they were making before. You have to sell the products before they are ready. Your customer said, "Hey, I'll make them work for you." Imagine. So you have always selling. If you are not able to sell, you're not going to succeed as an entrepreneur.
I think it's probably only fair to say that despite what we're saying, it is the most satisfying career. And shouldn't say it's the most, I don't know others, but it's extremely.
It's very satisfying. You feel that you made the difference. In my case, my startup, 100 people, my first 100 people made more than $1 million in 1987. That's about like making $5 million now. So they were set for life, the guys who came to work for me, and their children's education was assured and their retirements were assured. So there was a massive impact on large number of people's life that I had.
Yeah. And I'd say the other thing is, once you do succeed, even if you're not working for money, you end up with your equity positions in a successful company, making money that actually transforms your life. Before, as an entrepreneur, you're worried about stuff like, can I pay for the kids' education? Can I put food on the table? Can I save money for retirement? Then you get to the point where you've got money, you can actually make stuff happen, have an impact.
Yeah, and not after 1987, when we went public, I never had to worry about money.
Yeah,
never had to worry about, there was nothing that I couldn't do. I was able to pay Michigan Tech. I was, for the building. I was set up, similar stuff at my alma mater in Bombay. So your money worries are behind you, but money is not the motivation enough to do it. Money is an end, byproduct and end result of what your success. So that's how you measure success in a way. But if you are pursuing money, the easier way to make money than become an entrepreneur.
I agree with Kanwal, and you pursue what you like, and then the entrepreneurship is there's a lot of challenge up and down, and when you see a challenge, you welcome that, because it sort of helps you to shape up and then rise up to meet that challenge. And when you overcome that challenge and solve that problem, there's a great feeling that you have done that. And also, like Conan mentioned, money is a byproduct. When you pursue all those what you like, it sort of become a collateral benefit. It follows as a byproduct. So it comes hand to hand. So don't be afraid of challenge. And when I had a chance to speak to a graduating class about 10 years ago, I advise them, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone, because as you struggle to overcome the challenge, you will find the talent that you never knew within you as you struggle to overcome that challenge. And you have a lot of talent that was not, you didn't even know you have. And that's how we all grow in our lives. So don't be afraid of challenge and step out of your comfort zone and meet the challenge. And that's how you grow. That's how you rise up. And yeah, that's how you become a better person as well.
Yeah, can I jump in really fast? Rebecca, do you have anything to add to any of this conversation? Anything additional? Oh, I think you're muted also. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. No, I think, it's all true. It's all about passion. It's all about, I think Michigan Tech was a good, at the time, I probably wasn't enjoying it as much as, I wished I would have, but I did learn so much about obstacles and challenges. And it was difficult. And I think all those things did help me overcome challenges and solve problems. And, once you make up your mind what you want to do, and having the technical skills and the a combination of skills to make it happen, and a good team to make it happen. So, but everything that Chang, John, and Mr. Rekhi is saying is absolutely correct. And that is what entrepreneurs are. And how they accomplish.
What Chang talked about stepping out of your comfort zone. If you as an individual keep on doing what you're good at, you start to stagnate. You start to stagnate very quickly. The stuff, you start learning new stuff. I tell people, if you reach the top of the mountain in your profession, the next step is always down. Because when you're top of the mountain. So what you have to do is step, when you reach the top of the mountain, you get down and climb a taller mountain. But you cannot jump from one mountain top to the next mountain top. You have to come down. So you have to have this passion to say, I'm not going to let stagnate. I'm 76 and I'm starting a new venture now. Started a new venture in March this year. And I am having the time of my life. I'm having the time of my life. So you have to step out of your comfort zone. You have to do things you haven't done before. That's when you learn. You apply yourself when you don't know what the answer is. Your past experience and past skills don't help you. You have to think. So this notion of stepping out of your comfort zone is at the heart of being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have done this and I don't want to do that again. I could make tons of money doing more of that, but that's not. I want to learn. What's my next challenge?
The satisfaction is and the fun is in the overcoming the challenge.
Yeah, challenge, learning something new.
Yeah,
learning something new and mastering that one as rapidly as possible.
Yeah.
I never thought of it when I was younger, but a lot of my friends ask me, "Are you still working?" And I say, I can't remember the last time I worked. I put a lot of time in, but I love what I'm doing. And then the second question I get is, "Are you retired?" And I go, "No, I'm not retired, but I'm tired again."
Yeah.
So you guys are doing quite well. I do want to encourage everybody that's in the attendees, if you want to type in questions into the Q&A, feel free to do that. Some people have done that. And either myself and or Elizabeth or Mitch will be asking the panelists some of the questions from the Q&A that the audience is generating. So Elizabeth and or Mitch, feel free to ask additional questions that you have already prepared and or from the Q&A session. I see one there that I think John started to touch on. Maybe I'd love to hear your answers from all of you on this question. What do you wish you had known that you know now that you wish you'd known the day that you graduated as a new MTU graduate?
Maybe I'll answer that one, right? So Michigan Tech was to produce engineers for automobile industry. The goal was to get a job on the campus and go work. There was never any alternative presented, what else could be possibly done. And I wish somebody had told me way back then, hey, don't find who you are, don't find what excites you. It took me several years in life to say, hey, I reached the top of my profession in the engineering, in about 7 years after I left Michigan Tech. I was the best engineer they had at RCA when I was there. Anytime they got in trouble, I was taught. And I would bail in, jump in, and so for a while I enjoyed, but it's the same thing, there's a fire and they trial a firefighter like me. And later in life, I said, no. I want to see, what's the limit to what I can do? And I still not have found a limit to what I can do. I have achieved the things I never even thought I could achieve. So I tell people that one of the lessons I wish that somebody told me that, that there's no limit to what you can do. There's no limit to what you can do. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do that one. The only limits that you will have are the ones you place on yourself. And that's the motto I have followed. I am now doing things, I'm an engineer by training, but I am, equal to a PhD, in economics. I am on the board of Stanford Institute of Economic Policy Research, and I hold my own against best of them. And when I joined that about 20 years ago, I had not had even Econ 101. And so same thing is true. You apply yourself, you learn yourself. And so I am on the board of RAND Corporation also. RAND is one of the biggest think tank in DC. Defense think tank. On the board there too. And I am becoming a geopolitician because. So there's no limit to how far you can go, how far you can do. You just have to step out of your comfort zone, like Chang said, and apply yourself, learn. And it's you become a CEO of your own life.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John. Oh, wait. Well, so I think I would add to that is there is no limit to what you can do, but I think what I learned and what I think I value now is I didn't have to know everything. I mean, the value of a good team, and we started getting into team activities at Michigan Tech back then, but the value of the team, getting the right team and getting the team operating at the right cadence and having the right skill sets, you don't have to know everything. And so if you do run into problems, you have that team and you have a problem solving group, and it's amazing what you can achieve not only on your own, but with the group that you pick to work beside. And I just found that I wish I would have done that earlier. I didn't have to know all the answers, but I could always get to them.
Nowadays you can Google it.
Looking back for me, as an engineering student in 1970s, when we are competing with the Soviet Union in the deep Cold War, we are so in such a hurry to produce engineer. We did not have a chance to take any other course like English. We just focus primarily on engineering side. But the engineers tend to downplay the importance of communication. But I like to emphasize how important communication is. You have to, to succeed in business, you have to be very succinct and articulate your thinking. Otherwise, people don't want to waste their time. So try to learn how to communicate effectively and succinctly. I think that's something I value very much that I wish I knew when I was in college. And regard to the earlier question that Elizabeth asked about the entrepreneur and manager, I think what both John and Conrad described, as well as Rebecca described, is quite true. But the one thing that is common is that both entrepreneur and manager is more on the implementation side, and then the entrepreneur is on the more creative side. But both of them need to be creative. Manager, has to be creative and be able to think by their own as well. It's not just an entrepreneur. Manager has to do that. If the manager does not have a creativity and cannot think of themselves and only do what was told to do, it is nothing. They are not a manager. They are just nothing but a glorified clerk. So creative thinking and thinking in their own way is very important, whether you are entrepreneur or manager. And also, in terms of transition from entrepreneur to manager, I sort of learned somehow. And you can, as an entrepreneur, you can only do so much by yourself. You need to have a people you can trust and who are loyal to you to make things happen. So that's why when I made that transition, I said I have to tie myself on the chair because sometimes I'm not satisfied with what they do. But if I get involved in everything, they will never grow. So in order to build a trust and then command respect, leadership is very important. And I believe that leadership comes by setting an example by yourself. And that's how they trust you and respect you. You cannot take a 3-hour lunch and expect your subordinate to stick with a 1-hour lunch hour. That doesn't work. So, developing leadership is very important for you to run the whole organization so that you can do a lot more than what you can do by yourself.
So my answer would be, when I left, I wish someone would have told me I could be an entrepreneur or own my own business. I might have started a little bit earlier. And I'm so lucky that I got exposed to it. The second one, Kanwal touched on it earlier, is sales skills. And people think of sales skills as selling a product to someone, and that is part of it. But my job is sales, and I'm okay at it now, but I used to be bad at it when I first started. So that's the second thing I wish. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. Even if you're in charity work, you got to sell what you want to get done. And then the third one, which never bothered me, but I do see it bothers lots and lots of people. When I ran Advent Silicon Valley office, I used to, we'd hire young professionals that had gone to typically Ivy League school, maybe Stanford, and then they went to Goldman Sachs or McKinsey afterwards for a couple of years, and they came into our shop. And the thing that was amazing was a lot of them were just fantastic, skilled people, but they were afraid of failure and just wouldn't do stuff because they're afraid of failure. So, Kanwal, I've got a question for you. What if a very passionate entrepreneur came in with a great idea, great vision, and a plan on how to get started on doing it, but he had failed in his last company? Would you consider him? What would you think?
Absolutely. Somebody else paid his tuition, and I'm not a benefit. So I'll tell you, I'll broaden that thing. I am investor in early stage entrepreneurs. Where I invest. I've done over 200 investments, and I've done about 8 or 9 this year alone. Mm-hmm. First time a person walked into my office, he's not been entrepreneur before, and he says, I want to be an entrepreneur. He has average chance of succeeding. Only 2% of the population at large eventually succeeds as an entrepreneur. So very poor odds. So most people do the smart thing and get a job. So I will assess him as a person, and I'll place a bet. But if a person walks into me who has done well before, they say, hey, I made this thing happen. Would you invest? I normally don't invest in them because what has happened, they think they have magic. They think they have a formula. Every opportunity has its own dynamics and its own arts of success. So somebody who thinks he has a magic, I don't want to invest in him because he will start to delegate. He will start to not sweat the small details. He will, So the things, the successful people, he will have the admin to handle stuff. The guy who has failed before is a very good bet. He has learned his lesson. He knows what he did wrong. He knows what he missed. So if an entrepreneur who tells me that, I failed because my engineering didn't depart right. I failed because my customer canceled the order on me. I failed because my VCs, my investors, wouldn't give me any more money. You don't want to touch him. But the guy who watches and says, I failed because I stood up. I didn't see it happening. I didn't see my guy was falling behind. I didn't see my customers unhappy or my investor. I want to invest in him because he has learned his lesson. He has learned his lesson. So my first test is always, the guy, does he own his failures? That is a very good bet to invest in. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question right? Yeah, you were always a shill for me.
No, I had a feeling that was going to be your answer. So Kanwal would invest in me because I failed so many times. I'm a genius now.
But if a guy has failed 4 or 5 times, that's a different story, right?
Yeah, right. I'm not talking failing companies, but within your company, look at how many decisions you made that were bad decisions, but you overcome it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Eventually, it's the guy, is the person. I'm sorry, it's the person. I don't want to be sexist. That you're betting on. Yeah. You're not betting on technology. You're not betting on markets. Technology and markets are ever changing. What is true today may not be true tomorrow, but the person is constant. So your bet is always on the individual as a early stage investor.
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Please.
Okay. I have a question from the Q&A asking that if you got the opportunity to go through Michigan Tech again, what would you do differently? And this can be open to anybody to start off.
I wouldn't do anything different because I've done well after what I did at Michigan Tech. Why would I change anything? No, I think Michigan Tech prepared me for life really well.
I agree. I think tech has a number of things. I think it's a huge advantage being in a university where there's as I was in business, where there was a STEM and business combination. I was interested in engineering. You heard why I couldn't do it, but I took enough STEM courses and I interfaced with enough engineers that when I got into the venture capital business, the entrepreneurs thought I was an engineer, which was a huge advantage in one way, because I had some credibility. A lot of the technical people, if you don't have technical credibility, it really is a strike against you. But the bigger thing was that I could understand. And to me, as a business guy, I can deal with, many shades of gray and making decisions on no information. And for a while, it was hard for me to understand why, engineers, and it's not all engineers, but many engineers, it's very black and white. And I could understand that. So that was a big plus for me at Michigan Tech. And the other thing I think is that anyone going to Michigan Tech, there's not that many people that are living at home doing it. So you're at a young age making a decision to move away from your family and your friends and comfort and go into a different environment, which is what you're doing all the time as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And I think I would have done the opposite as John. I mean, I think the electives I picked, to really, that were more enjoyable, more fun. And I think after going out and doing an MBA, I think at that time I would have taken more business courses, more, if there's anything in project management or anything. I love technical writing. I think I did take that, but I think I would have tried to complement the engineering more with these other things, and even public speaking, different things to just round out a skill set right out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah. If I remember,
I think I took bowling and cross country skiing up there, but yeah, I think I would have maybe not have done that.
Yeah. I think Michigan Tech being in the Upper Peninsula, I think there's a certain sense of community which you don't feel in a large campus. So I think that's is quite good, and you can benefit from that as well. And for me, even though it's kind of hard to remember what it was like almost 50 years ago, but what I remember is sort of the difficulty I went through, and I think that helped me to strengthen me as a person as well. So when I have a setback in the business side, I don't panic as I used to when I was in college. So those are the kind of benefit I see.
Just one quick, Rebecca, you mentioned that you decided to earn an MBA, as with other panelists. What effect did that investment have then in your entrepreneurial pursuits?
It was huge. I mean, it was huge to understand the whole, the organization, the business, the finances, in detail. And even if I didn't do all of it, if I had, finance department or HR department or contracts department, I understood what was happening. I understood what needed to be done. And it was providing a better view to run the organization to meet the goals that we had to meet in order to be successful on the technology side. I also really enjoyed more of the collaborative case studies material that we did in the MBA. I think one of my favorite courses was change management, how to manage change. And that goes back to, it is scary when things don't work out the way you're supposed to, or technology disruptors or customer, anything that changes in the organization, and not only attacking it head on and coming up with a solution set, but engaging the team to all be on the same page and not daunted by change, to overcome change and to do it as quickly as possible. So I think even the hard skills, but also the soft skills with MBA were very valuable.
Thanks. I don't know if any of you else has anything to add on to that of what has helped from getting an MBA into your entrepreneurial pursuits, but
I never did my MBA, so I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add is that, as I mentioned earlier, in the business school, you go through a lot of case study, especially in marketing and management side. They sort of describe all the kind of problem that a corporation run into. And then we sort of analyze and then make a presentation of our own, how they should overcome that difficulty or problem. So that is quite exciting. And especially when you hear from other people's point of view and then try to learn from their perspective. And once again, that's something I carry with me even today after almost 40 years, more than 40 years, trying to look at it from different people's perspective and then see how they look at it. So.
Chang, could I ask you a question? Could
Yeah.
you describe the role that human rights, including equity and inclusion, have had in your business ambitions?
To a certain extent, but yeah, equity, those are important. Diversity is important because people offer different perspectives, just like I mentioned at the business school. In the business side, people with a different race or gender or age, they all have a slightly different perspective. So those are kind of things I value as well. And one thing I enjoy about being an entrepreneur, running my business, is being able to help other people. It's not an abstract term. I'll describe one incident because it may give you an idea. There was an employee I have who started out as a customer service side at the bottom of the rank. And a fellow had a car, and then car broke down, and then he could not afford come up with the $600 to fix that car. So he was coming to office, taking 2 different buses and taking an hour and a half. And when I learned about it, I loaned him $600 so that he can fix his car. So he was able to use his car from then on. And then fellow is a decent, good fellow, and he worked very hard. And then he sort of educated himself and become an IT person. And eventually he became an IT manager in my company, managing all the IT in my company. So he grew quite a bit within 10 years. And then eventually he moved on and he decided to run the IT department in a mid-sized town, pretty close where we are. And the town runs a hospital and police station and all those. I think about 80 people reporting to him as an IT director. So when he left, I told him, you can mess up my company's IT system, but make sure you don't mess up the hospital because you'll be in deep trouble. So, you see people growing like that from that to the, in charge of IT in a mid-sized town. I think those are kind of things that really make you sort of quite pleased with that kind of thing. So that's how you help people to grow in the job.
Yeah, I want to talk about the divergent thinking divergence in your team. As an entrepreneur, when you want to start, you want to have a person partner with the skill which are different than yours. You want to have, if you are a good technical engineering guy, you want to have a sales and marketing guy as your partner. So you need to have as many different skills as possible in the team. Not only skills, different skills around the team, but they also provide different perspectives on the same problem.
Yeah.
And so, and I want to add something there. But a divergent thinking team is the one which comes up with the new ideas. A group thinking team with everybody's same background, same thing, they get stuck. So you want to have as much divergent thinking in your team. So a typical startup needs two people. One guy says, I wish somebody could design this gadget, I could sell millions of them. And the engineer says, you sure? I can design that thing, but tell me who will buy from us. So, so one guy was thinking that, hey, if we had this, I could sell. The other guy says, I can do it and show me who will buy from it. That's the startup team. So one will, Mr. Inside and one will be Mr. Outside, and between two of them, one will design and other will sell, right? And that partnership starts to make it happen. So divergent skill set, with the divergent perspectives are very, very good to have in any team, but especially in early stage teams.
Kanwal, I have a question for you. You've talked a lot about change in entrepreneurship. So could you talk more about how you see global cultural trends affecting entrepreneurship?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you look at on this panel, there are two immigrants and a woman, and only one lonely white man in there. In John, right?
Yeah. The least successful of all of us.
Well, that's not.
The reason is the immigrant journey is very similar to entrepreneurial journey. It's a journey into unknown. When Chang left Korea or I left India, you land in America. Is it very? You have to learn to adapt, to learn, and to operate. So what we are seeing now, there was a sense, that we are superior, and we rule the world. But it's proven that in this modern world, with technology, is a great equalizer. And now you need to find talent where it is. So a typical Silicon Valley company, before the things started a little bit bad with China, had their software being done in India and their manufacturing and hardware design being done in China, and you had a sales and marketing team in the US. Which would have been impossible or unthinkable 30, 40, 50 years ago. So the integrating the different skill set and different talent from all over the world has become a hallmark of modern entrepreneurship.
I think there's another thing that's happening that's relevant to all you guys on the call is that if in the 80s and 90s, there was a huge advantage to being in Silicon Valley, being in the technology industry, in IT, to being in Silicon Valley. And I think there still is for those industries. But advances in communications and transportation have where you can start a business. And people think a lot of times of starting a business, being an entrepreneur, they think of Silicon Valley and the technology. Even if you're in technology, you can start it anywhere. But you can start your business just about anywhere, and you'll decide whether you can keep growing it there or not. And Kanwal and I have been involved in trying to do that at Michigan Tech, and there's a couple of pretty interesting businesses developing right in the Houghton area.
Or beyond there in Houghton, Professor Brad King, John and I both are on his board. He's doing a cutting edge work out of Houghton. He found me in Silicon Valley. I didn't know him, he didn't know me, but he knew me by reputation. I mean, and he came to see me here and sell me his dream and we funded him. And he's a phenomenal entrepreneur. He doesn't have to come to Silicon Valley. So you need to connect into sources of knowledge, sources of capital. But in this day and age of internet and modern communication and Zoom, you don't have to be in Silicon Valley anymore. And this is the point I want to make. Michigan Tech needs to raise the aspiration levels of its students. This MIT students have nothing over Michigan Tech students in terms of qualification, technical skills. They have higher aspirations because MIT has been doing this entrepreneurial thing. I think Michigan Tech needs to say, hey, we can take them on. And that's my dream, and that's John's dream. That's even we come to Michigan Tech. We have some of the best engineers. They think of getting a job in Detroit as their success. No, you need to think bigger, have bigger dreams, bigger aspirations, than just a job in Detroit.
Yeah, I would agree. There's nothing to limit what the tech students can do, and I think that if you can see if you have the same opinion, Kanwal, but when I would talk to guys and they'd hear I was from Michigan Tech, they go, "Oh, geez, those guys develop great engineers. They get."
Oh, I hear that all the time. Your best engineers, hands-on engineers.
Yes. Yeah.
They can make things happen.
And I was just at an offsite for a really exciting company, and I'm on the board of. We spent the weekend in Denver where it was 75 and sunny, which was nice. But one of the questions that came up was they're hiring engineers at a very high rate, and they've got a very good technical lead, not such a good manager, and he's getting overwhelmed with that. But his biggest complaint was, he goes, I hire all these brilliant engineers and half of them don't get anything done. And Michigan Tech engineers have the reputation of getting stuff done.
So
Yes.
we are getting close to the end of time here. And before we end, we've been pretty serious all night. So I'm going to take the liberty to ask the last three questions, but each person can only answer one of the three.
Okay.
So we're going to go around and everybody can answer one of these three questions. So what's the one Keweenaw Peninsula destination that every MTU student should visit? Or you can answer, if you could redo it, what one university class would you take right now if you had the time? Or you can answer the last question, what was your favorite class at Michigan Tech? So we'll go ahead and start with Chang.
Now to answer the second question, if I visit Michigan Tech, what will be the course that I will take? Certainly, I'll take a psychology. I'll give you the background. When I was studying engineering, I asked people, what do I have to do to improve my GPA so that I can go to graduate school? Or they say, oh, you have to take a gut course. And I did not know what the gut course was. So I asked people, what are the gut course? And a course like a psychology. So I thought psychology is an easy course. So I took a psychology course, and then boy, that was a big mistake. Because in psychology, you have to learn a lot of new terminology, and I was still trying to learn English. And then as an engineer, it doesn't make sense why monkey behave certain way and rat behave differently and all that. So it was extremely confusing. And instead of getting a good grade, I end up with a D. And I'm so grateful to Dr. Victor, who was my professor, for giving me D, because I was so sure I'm going to get an F. But the psychology afterwards, because of that experience, I pay a lot of attention on psychology, why people behave in certain ways. So I certainly like to go back and then expand on that course.
All right, Kanwal. So favorite place to visit, course you would take now, or the course you took?
I don't know if I would change anything, because like I said before, it's very hard to improve upon what I achieved in life, after leaving Michigan Tech. I come to Michigan Tech because I come to Houghton because I love, Michigan Tech. I always drive up to the end of the, peninsula, and sit there, and strip bar, stones on the Lake Superior. So, I don't know if I took a lot of courses at Stanford and at Santa Clara University after I got here, but mostly in things that I didn't need, law courses, business courses, random courses, courses in economics. I never took the courses in software or engineering, because I was doing so well in those areas on my own. I just wanted to explore what's out there beyond what I was doing. And that really prepared me for becoming an entrepreneur later.
Okay, John?
I think the learning side, taking some courses in economics and psychology really prepare you for life much better than just the engineering courses alone.
Okay, John, and place to visit, favorite course you took at Tech or the course you would like to take?
I think my favorite class would have been finance with Dean Johnson. But he wasn't there. So, but I did like, I think corporate finance was my favorite course from the business side. But the class that had an unbelievable impact for me was Russian history. I took two quarters of Russian history. And the only reason I took it was that my schedule was so busy with hockey and other classes that I didn't really want to take another class during the day, and it was for 3 hours on Monday night. So I took it because it was at night, but it was an unbelievable class. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things. The professor who taught it, this was in the fall and winter of 1978, he made a prediction that the Soviet Union would no longer be in existence in 10 years, which at the time was stunning because their economy looked like it was growing faster than ours. They had more missiles. We were falling, the perceptions were falling behind them and everything. We had the Iranian hostage crisis. We couldn't do anything. And he basically said, I just learned how you've got to look at how other people think. And take all kinds of things into consideration. So he was saying, for example, we think it's really evil that the Soviet Union has control over all of Eastern Europe. And he said, but your opinion on whether we should control Mexico or not would differ if we'd been overrun 4 times coming from Mexico. Then you would want to control Mexico. That was one thing. But the biggest thing he said was that and he even predicted how they would fall. He said that the Soviet Union was going to face a huge issue economically and militarily, in that, as Kanwal said, computers and information technology was developing. And in 1978, Apple wasn't even around. And he said there's going to be a computer on everyone's desk, and the Soviet government is going to have a choice to make. Do we let them freely share information so they can compete with us economically or militarily? Or do we keep the information flow restricted? And if we keep it restricted, our people don't realize how far behind we are. And if we open it up, they realize how far behind we are. They share ideas, and we end up out of power. And then he said the way that we should accelerate it is that we should increase our defense spending by 50% and go from 4 to 6%, because they'll have to go from 18 to 27%, and they'll never be able to do it. And that's exactly what happened. So sorry for the long story, but it was a big impact. And it goes to Kanwal's thing, is that you've got to be thinking and as an entrepreneur and trying to be creative and come up with different viewpoints on things.
Thank you, John. And so we began the night with Rebecca, and we'll finish the night with Rebecca. So favorite place, favorite class, or class you'd like to take?
I guess I would have chose number 2, but I would have answered exactly the way Chang did. So I'll go to number 1. So I think on the places, that was the places, right? Places where I go, I would go, believe it or not, to the Quincy Mine. And the reason I say that is I didn't, and I brought my kids back to maybe 15 years ago. They were about 10, 12, and we went down in that mine, and it gave me a whole new appreciation for the place, for the history. It made Calumet make sense. I never spent any time thinking about any of that when I was there, and so I think going down in that mine and understanding the history of the Keweenaw Peninsula was very interesting, and I'm glad I did it. I just didn't do it when I was there. And the Calumet Theater, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I may just want to pick up on that as well. A couple of years ago, there was a PBS program called Red Metal about the copper, focus on Calumet in turn of last century, how the miners, the former union, and then all those kind of tragedy as technology is taking away their job, And then there's a fire in Italian Hall where a lot of children died. It was very impressive. I never knew when I was in Michigan, in Houghton, the history of Calumet as to how it was at the turn of last century. I think the students should look into that history, Calumet at the time.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, it is 8:30 exactly.
Yay.
I would like to thank all of our panelists, and that very much all includes the two students, Mitch and Elizabeth, for moderating this. And we did a great job there of asking the questions. Chang, John, Kanwal, Rebecca, thank you very much for spending your evening with us, your wisdom, your thoughts. And I appreciate all of the people in the attendees. We didn't get to all the questions. I apologized for that, but I found it very, very wonderful, very interesting evening. So with that, I go ahead and say thank you to all and have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Good evening.